Welcome, Divine Hearts, and thank you so much for joining us this week. We have a very joyous guest joining us this week. She is Cathy Baumann, and Cathy is an embodiment guide. She is a clarity facilitator, and for me, she is this shooting star of light and illumination and joy. And she brings these frequencies through in all of her sharings and all of her work. She has had some beautiful and profound experiences of merging with pure consciousness and witnessing and becoming the light that she truly is. And so I'm really excited to be able to share Cathy here today so we can delve a bit deeper into these experiences and into her own wisdoms, her own wisdoms too. So thank you so much, Cathy, for joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here. And just as you're talking, I can feel the love of your community. And so I appreciate you welcoming me here.
Wonderful. So let's begin. Take us on your journey, if you will. Your journey of deepening your own inner connection, and also these profound experiences that have come along the way to illuminate yourself from within yourself in a way to where you are today.
Sure. Well, where should we begin? I think, you said that you had seen my interview where I kind of go really into starting with kind of the childhood story, which
Yes.
I rarely do. So maybe we'll breeze through that a little more and come more into the illumination, because that's the fun part.
Yes.
I'm really big on, we've already lived through it. Let's just be done with it and get to the good part, right? And so, of course, ironically, as I share this, I just put a video up today about integrating childhood aspects. So we have to just keep illuminating and moving forward in order for those aspects to come home to us, all those split parts and pieces and facets, because we're bringing all of us here through this body. Not all of us, not like we can really all fit in this physical form, but you know what I mean? We're bringing back the split parts from separation. And so I think as I start, what I will focus on is that. And so, I went through my whole early life, childhood, whatever, sound asleep. And I kind of joke that I retired when I was 38. I'm 47 now. But by the time I was 35, I'd been working a corporate job for 22 years, or around there, 20 some years. And I had 2 kids, married, and no interest in spirituality or religion, really. I say that with a caveat. I had read a couple Eckhart Tolle books, and a couple reincarnation books, and was like, yeah, that all sounds right. I don't like any of these systems, And so my awakening was really brought on, by just that lifetime of suppression. And I was on anti-anxiety meds, antidepressants, bipolar medication. I had taken a lot of different antidepressants over the years to quell my anxiety. I had really, really terrible social anxiety, if you can believe that, considering the work I do today. I was like kind of agoraphobic for a while. And, but so, suppressing everything down to the point where I couldn't function at all, and I think a lot of people have taken themselves to that point in order to get themselves to wake up. And so when that awakening happened, it was a complete, and it was happening for me. I didn't get this, of course, at the time, but I went through divorce and I ended up quitting my job, which I probably would have lost if I hadn't quit it, because I couldn't keep anything together and I was having panic attacks. And so when I started really waking up, I was transitioning. I started teaching yoga. I went to yoga teacher training. I had just gotten divorced. I'm searching, and I did, so I don't know, as far as your audience goes, but I watched all of these wonderful shows, with all these amazing facilitators. And I can remember, my life's falling apart and I don't know what's happening to me. And I'm watching these people thinking, will I ever make it? And it's kind of crazy to be now doing this interview, because I was looking at them like, thinking they're so far ahead. I'm never going to get through this and I'm never going to figure this out. So if anybody's watching this feels like that, it's just not true. Okay. So anyway, but yeah, it was just utterly hopeless. And so I did, I worked with facilitators and healers, and I read books and energy healing and quantum healing, and I had herbs and Bach remedies, and, I did Ayurveda and all these processes over those years. And then I found my facilitator, and it was like, and he was a embodied, a realized master for maybe 20 years now, just somebody who had gone through it completely, whose body had been broke down totally, and had just kind of come through. And when we started working together, like when I saw his first mastery program that I joined in the first video, I was like, I remember, it's like, I remembered his voice, because we've been working together in the other realms. So when people see me or you as a facilitator and they're like, gosh, you sound so familiar, or your voice or whatever, it's like, oh yeah, because we're doing work all the time, right? We've been talking for years, getting ready for this meeting, So it was just like a massive clarity bell went off, and I just knew that's it. That's what I'm here for. And it was the full really marriage of the higher and lower, that full integration of all bits of me to come home and to clear out everything that's not me. And so it was within a month, I quit my job, and that's when I retired. And my joke was, I was flat out barely able to get out of bed in the morning. I have 2 kids. It's like, it was everything for me to just do the bare minimum. And I had more despair than I can ever even put into words, And so when I quit my job, I thought, well, this is it. This is kind of do or die. Like, I'm either going to make it or I'm not. So who cares if I spend my retirement money, because I'm either going to learn like how to be joyful from the inside out completely, or that's it. I'm going to give it all I got, but I'm going all the way with this. And I'm glad I made that commitment, because, it's like, you can't really do a 99% on this thing, because it requires your full heartfelt intent, really, it requires your heartfelt intent. And that's the easiest route, because when you go back and forth and you flip and go into ego and fear and stuff like that, it just makes your life suck. So anyway, I was just, that's it, I'm doing it. And I guess the suffering and the despair really helped me come to that point, because I didn't really feel like I had any choice. But from that point on, it was like, I thought, oh, here we go. This is great. That early awakening stage when you're like, oh, I see the light and it's all good. But little did I know, there was a lot of junk to clear out. So I hit the bed. I mean, it was a few weeks after I quit my job, and it was just like, boom, I couldn't get out of bed for months and months. I mean, it was just so intense. And luckily I had a guide though, who was like, oh, this is all just happening for you. Isn't this great? You're moving all this old energy out, like, oh, don't worry. What's a couple years in bed, like, so it was wonderful to have somebody who could see the big picture, that I wasn't going crazy, totally. Because I thought many times, I'm doing this all wrong. What's wrong with me? Like, why can't I get this? What am I doing wrong? And so, that's a big part of the reason I do the work I do today, because I remember how hard that was, but how much it helped having somebody there kind of reminding me like, oh, this is good. It's good. It's all good. So, really I'll fast forward to 2015 when I had my big, I call it an NDE, or a full Kundalini awakening. But it was truly where having been on antidepressant, all those medications just a couple years earlier, I was just so dense, right? The body was so very dense. And so it was a real shocker. I know some people glide through these things with ease and grace. I'm not one of those people. So it was just, it was like a month of really intense integration. But essentially, when I left the body and went through portals of despair and horror and fear, and I just surrendered to it all. I talk a lot about surrendering and just you have nothing to fear. You're eternal, so it's like the only thing you have to fear is fear itself, right? Like your own giving power to it. And when I let it all consume me, I actually was consciously going into the body, refusing to pop out of my body. And I know a lot of people that I work with and that I'm friends with, that I talk to, they tend to like to pop out, like expand, out of their body. So a lot of what I do is getting people in their bodies with movement and breath and staying full time right here, because that's where we're bringing all of ourselves so we can fully enjoy this body. And so upon returning to the body after that huge explosion, I imploded, I exploded, I went to pure nothingness. You'll say that's the best way I can describe who I am. I'm not for years I was going through various levels, working with angelic, archangelic realms and galactic and celestial, and you got mystical realms and this and that, and who knows what else there is. It's just endless, right? And so the way that I would describe it is I'm a facet of all that is, and I'm expanded through all galaxies, all creation, right? As we all are. We're all the same, and that's me, that's you, that's everyone. And it's a matter of how much we will allow through our awareness in this body. And of course, as we clear those denser levels that I was talking about, then we get to feel more of that joy, that benevolence, that clarity that is us, that knows there's no fear. And we live in a world, obviously, with so much of that. But anyway, so bringing the light in, it was like from that point forward, upon returning to the body, I streamed in, it still amazes me. It was like a tone, like a single tone. And I was going, what is that? And then it's like that sound. I forgot what sound was. It's like it was gone for eons, but it was only like apparently like 8 or 9 seconds or something like that. But anyway, but I couldn't remember what sound was or sight, and everything was blue and white, and it was the clouds in the sky because I was laying on my deck. And as I streamed back into the body, lots of stuff happened that I could never really explain. But one of the things was I was immediately just laughing hysterically and sobbing, at the cosmic joke of this, that none of this is real, and the sobbing, though, is really the important part, because there was so much relief. Just the body was sobbing and sobbing and sobbing, this immense relief that I'm okay. I've always been okay. And I was just releasing all this fear for everyone in my life, my kids, myself. And, I was just going, oh my God, everyone's really okay. It's all really okay. Everything's okay, crying, laughing, just, that joy of it's all okay. How much fear have we all held in our bodies? And oh my God, it's just boatloads, right? So that was just so beautiful. And then I did have a hard time for a while integrating because nothing seemed very real or important. So there was some maturing that really needed to go on there, like not bursting into laughter over something that somebody finds really scary because you can see it's not real. So I was really trying to integrate a lot of light. My mind was trying to catch up for a while. So I've told people, I had to lock myself in the bathroom sometimes and just laugh hysterically, at people getting upset over little tiny things, and it's like, oh gosh. in the grand scheme of things, we sure have gotten used to getting upset over nothing. So yeah, so bringing in the light, really for me though, what the gift was personally was just from that moment forward, knowing, the embodied knowing of who I am. It's more like who I'm not, right? That none of this, yeah, no fear. But it's like, so there was a constant knowing that none of this is me, none of this reflects me, and not really able to get identified with any of it, right? So I became very almost disidentified, maybe a little bit to the other extreme, as a parent, as a friend, as a, you know, United States American, as a anything, as a girl, as anything. I just couldn't identify with humans for a long time. And I mean, that's a blessing actually, but it's very scary for the mind. So like I'd go to my kids' soccer games and sit there like, what would I say if somebody, you know, because the mind was very empty for a long time. And without those identities that just are programmed with their responses, it's like, oh, what do I say now? So the next several years were very difficult in terms of feeling sensitive, vulnerable, unfamiliar, unstable, how to operate. And I still spent several years spending a lot of time in bed, letting my body catch up, and really, quite honestly, knowing all is well, and having been so afraid and trying to heal myself and trying to fix myself and trying so hard, it was like, I can just relax now and breathe. And so I just did a lot of breathing and feeling and staying out of the mind, because really the key that tipped the scales when I had that big experience was I just stopped thinking for a very, very, very long time. And that's kind of how I live now. And, you know, we live from the space of feeling and sensing, or just wide openness, and let everything come to us. The knowing, the intuition, the things that arise to be shared, you know, with other people, or the downloads that stream in that we share, things like that. So, but the most important thing I really think was staying in clarity of what's me and what's not, because that is a tough job 24/7 when you have the world, people around you trying to pull you back into old. Ooh, that was a ride. Pull you back into old, you know, you're typecast into their role and their play. And then it's like you're acting differently. And now you're rocking the boat with all your relationships because you're no longer playing the part, right? So it was very turbulent to walk through that, like one relationship at a time, one conversation at a time, one phone call at a time. And so it was a very slow process. You know, I couldn't believe, I probably would have said, no way am I doing this, if I would have known how slow it was. Just, you know, I started working then. I hardly worked then. I taught like one yoga class a week. So about an hour a week for like 4 or 5 years, you know. And then when I took up a caregiving job, I worked like 2 hours a week or 4 hours a week. And I'd come home like, oh, I just have to lay in bed and breathe, you know, for the whole day, because it was like every experience was bringing in any aspects to integrate, you know, so you had to stay in that clarity, what's you and what's not feed those aspects, not feed those old energies, those old emotions, not play the old part, not play the old game. And then that would bring everything up though to be released. And then the body has to go through and realign and recalibrate, and your energy has to recalibrate. So it's like every little experience becomes a whole thing in and of itself. And so it's funny because the staying in your light and bringing more of it in and clearing up what's not you, it's like one tiny little experience at a time, you know? And so it's not like the big flashy events or whatever. It's the everyday things. It's the, you know, the people that are in our lives, the situations, everything is already right there for you. That's what you work with, you know? And so it's kind of funny how it's just all right here. But the staying in clarity part was huge for me. I mean, through all those years, I continued to listen to my facilitator, his webcasts and audios. He does monthly ones. I would listen to those, or I was in the Crimson Circle too, and I listened to a lot of their materials daily. I mean, every day. That's probably a lot of us are that, kind of compulsive, if I can say.
Committed.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's so funny because how many times over those years I'm like, well, I used to say, put me in coach. I'm so sick of just this laying in bed and breathing. And, you're constantly seeing whether it's childhood stuff or other lifetimes or other blah, 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 you're tying everything back together through this whole life, 100 ways from, Friday, it seems like it. And it's just like, how much more is there? Right. And it's like, few times I'd just be like, well, what am I actually even going to do with my life? Because I hardly worked for, the last decade. And of course, everything worked out. I share with people I've made probably as much money in the last 8 or 9 years since I quit my corporate job as I made in 1 year, but I've needed for nothing. Everything is provided when you follow the voice of your essence and your heart and your soul, and you say, I'll follow this without question. You are so covered. But it seemed like I didn't know, where is this going? Or, the mind wants answers, right? And I wasn't concerned, but the mind still, it's like, well, what are we doing here? And then it's like, oh, my passion, that commitment, like you said, is what we're doing every day. It's connecting with ourselves and learning about ourselves and learning about our energy and who we really are and identifying all the stuff that wasn't us. It's such a beautiful discovery. Like it becomes this love affair with yourself where you discover all these parts that were unloved and you welcome them home and you let them know, I'm here for you, like you've never done anything wrong. So that is really the passion, isn't it? The love and the compassion that we find in ourselves for ourselves ends up being, kind of like the main purpose.
Oh, I love that, Cathy. And there's so much there. One of the things that you've been sharing over your YouTube videos, and it seems like it's one of those things, one of your gifts to share, is the way that you approach things in the non-judgment of yourself, and that's been really beautiful to feel into that. And for example, yesterday, I was feeling there were irritations. I could feel irritations. It's very palpable, but my mind really wanted to delve in deep. And so with you in mind, I was able to, I'm just going to allow for those irritations. I'm not going to even try to specify exactly what it is, because it's only going to take me on a little journey, a little story of something that's just all made up. So just to allow it, because it's obviously just coming up to be seen in some way or felt to be released. And in that just allowing and the non-judgment of it, just because you're also teaching presence in a really beautiful way as well. So I was finding how it was so much easier in that whole way of just allowing, just the surrender, as you spoke about before. So because the mind and then the judgment, it's all taking us back, as you were speaking about, taking us back into all these identities, all these characters that others might perceive us to be, or we play these parts in different ways. So I found that to be really beautiful, and to feel it, just to feel it dissipate afterwards as well, was really lovely. So to speak to you a little bit more about this non-judgment, how powerful that is, how you came to that.
I love that you brought that up. When the first thing I did when I, you know, came back into my body, and it was like there's a million things going through my consciousness, is I grabbed a pen and I wrote down enlightenment is the absence of judgment. And it was like, you have to keep this, the mind was like, oh, we just had this huge experience. Like, how do I bottle this up and save it? It's like, I don't want to lose this. And so, and it was funny because the weirdest thing, I closed my eyes and I scribbled something, which I'm not an artist or anything. And it was like an acorn sprouting. And I was like, whoa, that really happened. So anyway, um, but that has been, I'd say, my guiding light, the absence of judgment. I mean, if you just take that out, there's nothing, there's no friction, there's no drama, there's no troubles. I loved what you said about everything dissipating, because it's like my daily practice, if you want to call it that, all these years. And I'll say the goal of mine has been to feel clear, like clarity. Like, I just want to feel clear, because that's just me, right? Not all this other stuff. I just want to feel clear, be clear in my presence. And then that's just my true self, right? My true awareness, my true expression. And so my approach to that is always to just come into that space of acceptance, of isness. Everything just is. And, it's like when you take the things that we judge out of the picture, it's, you could say the identities, coming into this, whether it's a minute or an hour of just feeling my presence and tossing out the identities, so tossing everyone out, whether it's my boss, my kids, my parents, toss everyone out of my awareness, and just find that total acceptance. And it's like, yeah, everything just dissipates. But really, in every moment, that acceptance is huge. When we take a breath with ourselves and feel what it is we're resisting, whenever it comes up, whatever it is, whether it's another person or something out in the outside world, or we're like, oh God, look at my stomach today, or whatever it is. And you just acceptance. It's like that soothing balm, just the energy just glides off, that friction energy, the emotional energy. It can't stay in acceptance, because, the emotional energy is what we have stuffed in our bodies of consciousness that creates the veil. And it's like, people talk about the veil. Well, okay, so we can talk external, internal. Technically, the veil is inside of you. We each have our own veil to our own thickness, right?
Yeah.
So it's like one person has a thick veil, the other person's wide open, can see, So it's like, it's really that acceptance is the balm that lets the veil disappear, because all emotion is created of duality. It's emotion is positive or negative, good, bad, up, down, and it's like when there's no push or pull, there's no friction. And with total acceptance, it's like that surrender. It's like going limp noodle as a kid, instead of fighting your parents, you just go limp noodle. And that's really where it's like, there's nothing you can do with that limp noodle. It just lets everything slide away. So it's like the compassion, the acceptance, the presence, they're so, so simple. And it's just hilarious, because I've had times where the mind is very, very quiet. I've anchored into such stillness, and it's like a hum of nothingness. And the mind, I've had times where it just gets really ticked off. It gets so uncomfortable, like, wow, this is boring. What are we supposed to do? It's like, I want some drama. So, and so we're so addicted to that drama. So it's like, it's kind of funny, because a lot of people will fight the acceptance, and it's like the key is really to go into your heart, into your presence, into your breath, and get out of your mind. Like you said, the mind was, wanting to go into it.
Yeah.
And it's knowing, like you said, you're not your mind. So It's like, hey, I'm not the mind and I'm not the body. I'm just the awareness of it all. And whatever.
You've also spoken about through the years of your experiences when you were sort of in physical struggle and you were laid out and that human aspect of you would feel the suffering. But then through your illumination, seeing that there is no suffering. And so for you to share a little bit more about that so we can understand more.
Yeah, that's still a very pertinent one for me today. So it's funny because the way that I live now, there's no suffering. There's no real struggle. There's no suffering. And that sounds great, right? I mean, it is, it's good. It's been a long time since once in a while, there's a little, little struggly, just a smidge. And even with like big anger or, sadness is a thing that I've looked for years. That's just like, sometimes I've gone looking for it. Like, am I repressing something here? But there's still, I just want everybody to know, there's still all sorts of weird feelings. And it's like, the more my body is it's still constantly evolving. And I don't think that's going to end. It's constantly speeding up and realigning. And so the physical body does weird things and the energies feel weird and we feel more and more and more and more. And it's like you can feel so many things all at once and so much intensity because we're willing to feel now, and that's probably like the mind still trying to catch up with all that. But what I will share is, going back to sometime in my old house, so many years ago, laying in bed for a long time with lower back pain and going back to what we were talking about earlier, going into that place where no one exists, nothing exists. You come in, I come into that place through my breath and feeling my presence. And I, I share that my audios and stuff. I guide people into those experiences, but I, from that place, oftentimes will just let myself expand through the body. And that sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's hard. Sometimes it happens in 5 minutes. Sometimes it's like, oh gosh, an hour later, I'm still feeling heaviness. But I did for a long time come into that expansive place, my nothingness place, and expanding to the point where you feel translucent, right? And then, I was able with a lot of the pain in the body to feel my awareness outside. I'm not leaving, but I'm to the right or to the left or behind the body, watching the mind, and then start working with the pain, going, okay, go ahead, increase, which is scary to the mind when you have pain that keeps you up walking every night, and you can't get comfortable. But it's like, we got to deal with this. There were a lot of ways that I approached it, and mostly letting the body take care of it itself and my higher levels, my essence, my creator essence, oversoul levels, take care of it for me, right? But there is a point of at times acknowledging and going into these sensations because they're screaming out for you, and this had been screaming for a while. And so I was able to go into it and say, go ahead, give me all you got. And that's something I've done a lot with whatever's, like, I'm done running from you. I'm done avoiding you. I'm done fighting with you. Just let me have it. Go ahead. And that's kind of the surrender thing, the acceptance thing. And, I could watch at times the body go into what would be extreme pain, but I wasn't perceiving it as pain. But I was watching the mind, watching the body, going, okay, the body doesn't have pain. The mind perceives sensations as pain, right? So it's reporting,
Yeah.
this is pain, this is bad. And then recognizing, okay, mind, well, I'm aware of this now. Like, you don't have to make this as pain anymore. Telling the mind, like starting to reframe it with the mind, like, we don't need this pain. I'm aware of it. And I really think that through that, my perception of pain changed, because then it's like I didn't really have any pain in the body after that for years and years and years and years. Now, there's a disclaimer, as there always is, because every now and then something would act up. This spring and summer, I just went through so many physical integrations. It was more intense than it's probably been for several years. And it's like, at one point it felt like my sacrum was cracking open. At one point it felt like my heart was cracking open, and there was a day in bed here and a day in bed there, and salt baths. And, really for the last 2 weeks, it's felt like there's hot lava pouring up and down my spine, my central column. And it's very like uncomfortable. Now it's interesting because when we're not in judgment, so I'm going to go back full circle with this whole judgment thing. Okay. When we're in that compassion, that acceptance, that total acceptance, it's amazing, because that's basically the absence of judgment. So I'll call that kind of the same thing. It's like, and you're breathing and you're in presence and you're not in your mind. Your body is 24/7. The cells are doing what they need to do. It's like sleeping. It's better than sleep. Most people's sleep isn't as rejuvenating as my awake hours, right? Because their mind is still going. And so your body is constantly doing whatever it needs to do. Your light body's integrating, your physical form is realigning, whatever all this mystery is that's going on inside of our bodies. And, when you go into judgment, reaction, fight, flight, any kind of resistance, any struggle, you are, you're doing that to your body, right? To the cells. It's affecting your cellular structure. And so that's what causes aging. Judgment causes aging, period. And those emotional energies in the body. And so when you're in this fluid state of acceptance, your body's in a fluid state. So it really is like that physical healing. It just happens on its own. It's like, I went to the doctor, like a few months ago. I ended up going to the chiropractor and I needed a note. Well, it had been 11 years since I had been to the doctor, because when I quit my corporate job, I didn't have insurance. Now, I'm not advocating that for anyone else. That just happens to be what happened. And it's like, so from having, I had been diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis before that. That's why I had to go back now and get a blood test to show I don't have it, so I could get a chiropractor adjustment. And other stuff. They were testing me for autoimmune diseases, the whole gamut most people have. Everything hurts. Nobody knows what's wrong with you. Your whole body's breaking down. Your life's falling apart. So, to take that physical healing full circle, it's like, when you're in a state of ease and fluidity, so is your cellular structure, and the light can move and meld, and those old emotions can leave. But the funky part about that is, now going back to that, what we were talking about is, I'll use yesterday as an example. The video I posted today was on aspect integration. And so I had to lay down 3 times yesterday as I was trying to make a yoga video. And it just was, I could just feel this thing, from the time I got started. I was like, oh boy, got something funky. Like you said, that irritation, it was just like, ooh, I got a lot of something moving here today. And I never made the dang video. I had all day to do it. And I had to lay down 3 times and breathe and feel and just say, show me what this is, instead of thinking about it, right? Instead of making any story, you just go inside, take a breath, open up, relax, and then show me, what is this? Why is this here? Where did this start? And the reason I had to lay down 3 times and do this, it's like, you kind of like would have wanted to jump out a window more than feel it. It was just so So that irritation, right, is like,
Yes.
I'll peel my skin off. It's like, no, we're gonna sit, lay down. And instead of giving up on my video, which I never did give up on it, I just like ran out of time. But, or, plowing through and be like, I'm just gonna do this anyway. It's like, stop, slow down, feel, breathe. Okay, what is this? What is this? And by the third time was the charm. And I ended up finding this childhood aspect who was, her job was to get out of doing stuff. So she was doing a great job. I gave her a high five on that. Doing her job like to the best degree possible. Couldn't get that video made for anything. And but once she integrated, it was like this bubbling light refill that I got to experience. And so that really is, the physical health. It's all kind of one and the same. The more we embody and reclaim those parts and release the gunk that was that was taking up space in us, those emotions and those belief systems and constructs and energies and whatever, all those identity constructs. It's like everything happens from the inside out. It's like the more your heart is open, you could say, your health, your relationships, your every direction of your life. It's like the reflection of the one reality that is you now, right? So did that answer your question? I don't even know.
It did, Andy, and more, because I told you in the beginning that every time I see you, that I see you as this character from the Disney little animation movie called Inside Out. And how apt is that? The name itself, but I see you as Joy. I think she's called Joy, and she's one of the main characters, and because she is joyous. So that's beautiful. Can I move you to speak about, if you're happy to, your experience of, because you've spoken before about manifestation. So manifestation, what that looked like during your corporate years, because you achieved everything that you wished to experience. So you manifested everything that you wished to experience in that frequency realm. And now, in this frequency realm that you are embodying and holding, what do these creations look like and feel like, and the process of that creation too, how they differ, or if you feel a difference?
Yeah, it's totally different, obviously. So, I mean, the corporate years, my God, my whole life was autopilot of whatever my parents or society, it was an autopilot of survival. So, it just was unconscious, you could say. It was get as much money, doing as little work as possible, as easy as possible, with as little fear. I wasn't driven to stretch myself, to grow, to evolve. It was just like, it was a total survival mentality. Absolutely. And it was, it was just completely unconscious. So I don't even know, the manifestation happened on its own with the flow of energy, of old energy, right? Yeah. So I was kind of on the ride, which was good because everything always worked out. I always said, I'm the luckiest person alive. This has worked well for me. I'm a very simple person, which is good, as far as getting out of the mind goes, because I was never overly identified with my work, or I always said, if I get fired today, I can be flipping burgers tomorrow. So I wasn't too worried about my job title, or, just so I had a nice house and comfortable life. So it was very simple. And I was more up always for happy hours than the work itself. That was my special, happy hours. Who's going out tonight? All right, I'll be there. So it was like that. It was like how to just have as much fun as possible, really. But I was carrying a heavy load, obviously, of fear that propelled me. So it all worked. I see it's cool to kind of be like, yeah, I see how that totally worked for me in the old consciousness, right?
Yeah.
Now, oh my God. So that's the fun part is, I will say my moves, I've moved several times, so I'll say that what I've kind of learned here about this all is, again, if I had known then what I know now, I don't know if I would have been up for this, but I've moved so many times, different homes, different places I've lived, different places in the country. And I've had so many different jobs, little jobs, doing little this, little that. But what's happened is all along the way, what I did with that inner connection, my presence was always connecting with myself, asking for my voice to guide me. And, at one point it was like, I remember the archangels and then the ascended masters were out here. And it was so funny because you're talking about inside out. And it was like, all of a sudden everything went inside out and all the voices were like inside of me, and again, as a facet, like I said, of consciousness of all that is, as we expand more and more, it's like, now what guides me, my voice, it's integrated through my body. If I ask, it started in the heart center and then it kind of kept merging downward. And for me, it's a voice. Now, for anyone listening, I've heard all different stories. There's no one way any of this has to be. So these are all like, maybe this applies to you, maybe not. But it's like a vibration, a presence, a voice, and it's always changing frequencies and tones. And it's always evolving. And sometimes what my next move comes in as a presence. And it's like, oh, this is what we're doing. I just feel it and know it, right? Like I remember going, oh, we're moving to Colorado. All right. And I could just feel myself there. And it was like, yeah, that's what I'm doing. So it's always kind of evolving. And my commitment will say is thy will to my creator self, not to the mind, right? So I've made that commitment to say yes to that voice, which is a hell of a commitment. And even though I had that clarity of what's me and what's not, there's times over these years I've walked through fears that have, in the beginning at times, because I was so dense in the body where I was having seizures, shaking fear out. And I knew, that it was all good. But I've had tremendous fear to walk through, and it feels terribly intense when we're following our true voice into our true manifestations, because it's breaking down all the barriers. And what I didn't realize was that period, I'll say up till now, all these little journeys I went on were like me walking through old fears again and again and again. It wasn't necessarily the path of least resistance or whatever, but it was, because ultimately you walk through it, you stay in presence, you stay in breath, you stay out of any kind of judgment. Everything is what it is. You stay in compassion, and all those energies just collapse. They leave your body, they leave your world, and those old manifestations are no longer attracted into your life, right? So we just kind of walk through them and watch them all collapse. Next. And then, comes this clearer point. So like today with manifestations, it comes from me, really. And when things come in the physical, the way that I've, it's like we become our own best friend through this, because we're constantly connecting with all these parts and pieces of ourselves. So it's like you get to know your own mind, your own ego, your own patterns, your own voice so very well. And it's like you start to really become very astute when things come in and they're an old energy thing, something you used to give your power to, something you used to, maybe obligations, or maybe it was your own identity to, I don't know, either be the victim or be the hero, whatever the roles that you tended to play. And so it's like when those come in, you can almost feel it. And it's like, oh, yeah, that doesn't feel good. And so now it's like just like when you sent me the message inviting me here, I was like, oh, it just felt light and beautiful. And it was just, I didn't have to check in with myself. Like sometimes I'll be like, okay, I'm thinking this is a no. Should we do this? Right. But it was just like, oh yeah, this was, that was a no-brainer, kind of a pun, actually. It was a no-brainer. But yeah, so the manifestation, it really is letting it all kind of unfold on its own. But there's like, it's been such a, gosh, that's been a tricky thing for me, is like conscious choice and letting everything unfold on its own and not controlling, right? How to like not create from the mind, and it's like, and discerning like what is the mind or what is old patterns or whatever. It's like when I started my website last year and I was wanting to go back to work, because that's easy to me. I can go get a job anywhere or whatever. And I just kept getting nudged gently back to working on the website. And it's a whole new thing to create a web, all the stuff, the technology and stepping out and being like, here I am, world, after being in a like religious family and very conservative area and being a corporate person, like, oh, I'm super weird spiritual person now. It's like there's a little resistance there. What could I say? So it's like I just kept getting nudged back, but it kind of goes back to like doing everything with that constant awareness and presence and one breath at a time. And I like to get really, really clear on what it is I'm doing, whichever direction that is, because if I'm not 100% on board with whatever I'm manifesting, it's not going to be, I have to be 100% in my heart, right? Or it's just not going to be good. It's going to be half-assed, right? Yeah. It's going to be half-hearted, half-assed, and you're not really all going to be there. So it's like, I started making these breathing, like I was like, I'm going to make some breathing courses. And I kept getting like pulled away. Nope. And I was like, well, what the heck? And here I had been downloaded my group program is Everyday Life as Creator. And it's just a little group and it's kind of a social thing. And it's like really nice because a lot of people, a lot of us don't talk a lot about all this weird stuff. And so we have a topic. But when that was presented to me, I was like, oh, wow, that sounds like fun. And I'm like, yeah, we're not doing that right now. Cause it just seemed like, me, like, no, that's too much. I'm not ready for that. Like, I'll start with a breathing, like little breathing course, like I wanted to start small. And then I kept, trying to go this way and do this and that way. And I would get like these nudges, like, come on, let's go for a while. Let's do this. And then it just kept coming back. And I was like, oh, okay. But what I had to do was look at it and say, now I know this is the manifestation, right? And what I do is I tell my team, and again, everything being inside out, it's like, there's no big differentiation between my multidimensional aspects and the ascended hosts or the archangels. We're all kind of one big team, right? So their job is put this in linear order for me and bring me the top potential. Just put these in linear order and just tell me what's number one, and I will just do it. I'll just do it. And because I've been shown so many times, I can trust myself because that's all a reflection of me, of my highest consciousness. And so when I went to start the group program, for example, it's like, ooh, okay, still feeling a little weird about this. All right, this is where we got to lay down, go inside and say, what's going on? What's the worst that could happen? Let's go right into the fear, and well, what if nobody signs up? Okay, well, let's just look at that then. And I take the mind there. You're guiding it like a child because these are usually aspects created in childhood. So you're that parent, you're that elderly one, you're the loving grandma, you're all that, you're the God for your little ones, right? And so it's like, well, if nobody does, then nobody does. So what? I love you anyway. And then it's like, well, what if we can never take a day off? You know what? I'm in charge here. And I'll tell you right now, I'm in charge of the schedule. So we don't have to worry about that. And, you just let all those little worries come up and you address them one at a time. And, it's like that acceptance, right? Whatever happens, I'll accept it. It's okay. There's nothing earth-shattering. There really isn't. And, it's like, that is a process almost that kind of happens every new manifestation, because everything that keeps unfolding for me is just shining a light on any other little bits of fear that I still have in this body of consciousness.
I'll be sharing all of your details below this video so people can come and find you. I wanted to ask you about your clarity sessions that you hold for people and with people as well, and how you have found these to unfold, and some of the ways in which you work, maybe, or what you find there might be common themes, and sort of ways again of coming into our own clarity, which you have spoken about.
Yeah, well, that's a good question, how these things flow. Because it is just, it's not a consistent thing, or there's not a process.
Yeah.
So so it's funny, because when I started doing clarity sessions, with people as an offering, rather than just the casual day-to-day stuff, right? I've been teaching yoga, for almost 10 years. Well, 10 years now. Yeah. Wow. Time flies, doesn't it? 2012 was 10 years ago. And but it's like, it was so funny, because I'll share with you the hardest thing for me to get over in working with people was the work, the efforting, the mind. So when we do a clarity session, it's like I might be connecting with them days in advance, days after. They could be showing up anywhere. I'm out driving my car, or when I go to bed at night, I might get a download, or we're in another realm dimension. So we're working together multidimensionally. Half the time, I don't know what I'm doing, because I'll hear things I'm doing that I don't know about, that my mind doesn't know about. But and then there's times where I don't see anything, and I show up, and it's like, I'm just surprised to see what's going to unfold. And, with everyone I work with, so it's kind of like what we're talking about here today for you and I, for anybody watching. More than probably 95% of what's happening today is happening beyond the words, right? It's all happening in presence, tones, frequencies, encodements of consciousness. Things are moving and grooving. We don't even know about it. And so there's a lot that's happening at that level. Last year, it was like, at one point, myself kind of had a little chat with me saying, all right, would you just stop? Because I was, maybe like the night before, that day, an hour beforehand, going, okay, I should breathe now and tune in. And it was like, you don't have to do that anymore, Cathy. And that's the new energy. That's really the new energy we're living in. So my mind was still like, well, I want to make sure I'm doing a good job. So I'm going to stop what I'm doing and breathe and tune in. And it was like, you don't have to do that. You're actually like blocking yourself if you do that. And so it was like, oh God, this is too easy. So much of this becomes too easy for the mind. So it's like, we're always reminding the mind, presence and breath and openness and awareness is where that flow is, and just even in flow, whether it's play or enjoyment or fun or whatever, and not worrying. But so yeah, when I'm working with somebody, it could be that I get a good sense of where we're going beforehand, or it could unfold right there. Oftentimes I will bring in energy through breath, have them bring it in, because we're moving a lot of energy, and a lot of people aren't breathing. They're not relaxed. One of the biggest feedbacks I get from people, whether I'm working with them, I'm with them in the physical, or they're listening to my videos, is I relax people. I put them to sleep. I have a tendency to have that effect on their bodies, but that's maybe just one of my skills or whatever. And so a lot of times I'll have them bring in energy, like the audios I make, the Shavasana, will open up together, so I can just kind of be that presence that helps them to open up in that moment. And and bring in more light and let some of that old stuff move while we're together. And it kind of starts a process that'll go on probably for, days or weeks. So that's usually part of a session, but you never know. But one of the important things is really, I find in a session, what's really important at times is I like to bring the mind through it, because I know the tendency is for people then to tomorrow wake up and kind of like go back into the old habits or the old routines. So I like to bring in very practical things with what they can do physically, whether it is making a little note card, reminding them, not to think, to breathe and feel, and to stay out of the head and stay out of fear, making notes literally, like, here's, I don't want to say homework because nobody likes homework, but some very practical things like that they need to focus on in order to shift whatever it is that they're going through. And for a lot of people, it's like that getting out of the mind, breath and presence, and it's all going to be okay. And it seems like a lot of what I just do is remind people that they're okay and it's all going to be okay, beyond the energy work that happens and all the other stuff. And a lot of times, it's connecting with either childhood aspects or a lot of times it's, and I know you do Akashic readings, right? Yeah. So a lot of times I'll see them, whether they're a nun or this or that, what's going on, how it's affecting this lifetime. And you probably know this as well. When we are accessing those dimensions with them, it's like we're shining a light. We're shining our light of awareness, their light. We're amplifying that, and it is dissolving those energies from the inside out. So it's just like accelerating this big release. So a lot of the talking really in the session part is like what they can do now to let that release be permanent, because we can't really do it for them. They have to be willing to let go of the identification of the fear. And then, that's the getting out of the mind part, right? And then for a lot of people, it's like that void space. When you let go of so much fear and identity, then it's like, well, who am I and what am I doing? And how do I start manifesting? And so for some people, it's more getting them into that, like, all right, now, what are you gonna do from here? Like, what are you gonna create? And for some of us that didn't do anything for so long, it's like, for me, for years, it's been putting together a schedule, setting an alarm, getting up and going, like trying to get some structure back to life so I can start manifesting, because I was out there, floaty for so many years, just very ethereal, not wanting. And really my big challenge was like, I already know I made it. Like basically that whole, I've already blasted out of here. I know I'm done. If I died today, so that was like, chopping wood and carrying water. Once you have cleared so much fear and who you have, that sense of who you are, you really know that, you embody it, you trust it. It's like, well, if you're going to stay here on the planet, you want to enjoy yourself. And part of that is manifesting. And that requires getting up and doing human stuff, right? So much of it is helping people through these like processes, because it's, when when you're in it, at times you feel like, I don't know what to do. And so it's beautiful to get that, to kind of have that bigger picture now where I can see where people are at and what's really going to assist them and just nudge them forward. Everything I teach and share, if you've watched my videos, is about tuning into your own voice, getting your own clarity, that connection with yourself, because you are, your own wisest being, right? You're your own guide. But it's until you have that trust and that interconnectedness, it can seem utterly impossible at times. And that's, the sessions that I've done with people and the work that I do, and sometimes the feedback I get, it's like tremendously gratifying, because it's like, going back to the earlier days of feeling hopeless and just utter despair, and I'm not going to make it through this. And I was sure for a couple of years I just wasn't even going to live through the whole thing. It's like I'm reminded of that because I don't feel that so deeply anymore. I don't really feel anything that level, even close to that level in my whole being. And then when I started to work with people again last year and really started working more directly with people, it was like I was reminded, and I was like, holy shit. And that's motivation to get up, get out of bed, take a shower, get ready, make a video, when you realize that people are at times at the end of their rope, feel like they're barely just making it day by day, or, you know, and think any of us here have felt that feeling so lost or so alone on this journey. So that's hopefully something that, you know, I bring to everyone that I connect with who's on this, who's interested in the work I do.
Oh, Cathy, thank you so much for sharing your space here with us today. You've I can feel the benefits already. I've been breathing so deeply through this session here. So there's been beautiful work going on. So I'm very appreciative. Thank you. Thank you. And I just wish you the best with everything that you're doing, and your light is so radiant. And I will be including all your information below as well, so people can find you easily and feel your frequencies and your light, and see if your offerings resonate with them too, which I'm sure they will. So thank you so much.
Gosh, thank you so much, Lois. You know, for anybody who's watching, this is the first time Lois and I have talked or met. And so I just, you know, I could feel it from the time you sent me the message, and I was so excited to meet you. And you have such a soothing, calming, beautiful presence. And I appreciate that, because, you know, I just started really getting into this work in the last year. I've only done a couple interviews. And so you've made this whole interview for me just so smooth and easy and comfortable and enjoyable. And I've enjoyed interacting and talking with you so much. So hopefully we will, you know, talk again. And thank you everyone for watching as well and being here. I can feel, like I said, so much love in this space. So thank you for creating this amazing space, which just helps everyone on this journey not to feel like they're all alone. It's wonderful.